The alien shriek of a human girl echoed through the dark halls of an Iconian black site as the brutal Inquisitor Xyloth plunged his neuroprobe deep into her cerebrum, cracking open her mind to extract Earth's most sensitive secrets. But one hardened ex-Marine would make damn sure the bug-eyed bastards would regret ever touching her. Bobby Murphy, a battle-scarred mercenary, slouched in the cockpit of his cloaked scout ship as it hurtled through the lawless fringe of the galaxy towards a remote prison moon. An urgent, encoded message from his old squad mate had just blown his world apart. The girl being tortured was named Alara, and she was only the beginning. The sadistic Iconian Empire had finally captured a human alive to interrogate. If that girl broke, if she spilled even a scrap of critical intel, it could lead to the total destruction of the fledgling human colonies scattered across the stars. The Iconians dominated this arm of the galaxy with ruthless insectoid efficiency, and they saw humans as the most dangerous rising threat to their supremacy, a threat to be crushed without mercy. Bobby knew he had to get Alara out of that hellhole of a prison before it was too late, but it would be the most desperate raid of his life. The Iconians' fortress was locked down tight, swarming with elite guards and automated guns, all on high alert. He'd be outnumbered and outgunned as soon as his boot hit the ground, and he'd be pitted against Xyloth himself, a master inquisitor who could shred a captive's sanity in days with advanced drugs and neurotech. But Bobby owed his old squad mate, and deep down, his training as a Marine had burned one ironclad instinct into his core: leave no human behind. He would infiltrate that moon base like a ghost, cut through anything that stood in his way like a plasma-bladed scythe. He'd rip Alara out of her cell and steal a ship, blasting his way out of the heart of Iconian space with nothing but a rifle and the element of surprise. The bugs would learn the hard way what happened when they dared to harm even a single human hair. One man, one rifle, one impossible mission, all to save one girl, or leave humanity itself to burn. The prison moon loomed ahead, wreathed in the raging storms of the gas giant it orbited. Bobby slid on his powered armor, hefted his gun, and prepared to drop into the most hostile territory he'd ever braved, to mount a near-suicidal commando raid that just might change the fate of the galaxy. Bobby Murphy's cloaked scout ship sliced through the void, hurtling towards the foreboding prison moon. As it pierced the outer defenses, Bobby input the stolen access codes with steady hands, his powered armor already locked into place around his battle-hardened frame. The codes worked. Bobby ghosted into the hangar bay, his ship nothing but a shimmer of distorted light. He slipped out, rifle in hand, melting into the shadows of the Iconian stronghold. His contact's schematics guided him through twisting corridors, past humming power conduits and thrumming grav lifts. Patrols of chittering guards stalked by, their compound eyes scanning, but Bobby's stealth tech kept him concealed as he prowled ever deeper. A quick splice into a wall terminal, and he was in their network. Alara's cell location flashed onto his HUD, deep in the most secure cell block. Bobby set off with renewed purpose, his armored boots barely whispering against the alloy floor. But the way to Alara was not unguarded. A pair of hulking Iconian soldiers loomed ahead, plasma rifles ready. Bobby didn't hesitate. He surged forward, a blur of matte black armor. His rifles cracked, once, twice, and the guards crumpled in sprays of ichor. Their dying screeches echoed as Bobby leapt over their shuddering carapaces, onwards to his goal. Alarms blared and metal sealed behind him, but Bobby fought through it all like an oncoming storm. His armor shrugged off searing plasma bolts as his own rifle leveled entire squads of insectoid warriors. Their hive-minded tactics were nothing to a Marine. He scythed a path through their defenses, an unstoppable human juggernaut. At last, Alara's cell was ahead. But a final figure barred Bobby's way, a lean and lethal silhouette wreathed in flickering energy fields. Xyloth. The Iconian Inquisitor stood before the cell, his sleek armor studded with vicious neural probes. "You're too late, human," Xyloth hissed, his mandibles twitching. "I cracked your female's mind open like a Zor egg. Her secrets are mine. Your race's days are numbered." Red rage filled Bobby's vision. He launched himself at Xyloth with a wordless roar of challenge. They clashed like titans, armored fists hammering, sparks spraying from the rending impact of their mechanized suits. Xyloth was fast and brutal, his limbs a flurry of blows powered by whirring servos. But Bobby was a brawler down to his marrow. He hammered the Iconian's armored shell like a piston, denting and crushing the hissing hydraulics. Xyloth screeched and lashed out with razor limbs, but Bobby caught the blow and wrenched with all his might. The Iconian's arm snapped like a twig. Xyloth reeled back, ichor spraying from his ruined limb. With a final heave, Bobby tackled the Iconian mastermind to the floor, even as he ripped an EMP grenade from his belt. He slammed it onto Xyloth's chest and staggered clear. A blinding flash, and the Iconian's armor seized up, shorting out in a flood of sparks. Xyloth's agonized shrieks echoed and died as he spasmed on the floor. Bobby pushed through the smoking cell door, his heart pounding. Elara was strapped to an interrogation rack, her eyes vacant, her mind shattered by neural probes. Bobby focused his mind until it hurt as he carefully cut her free, cradling her limp form. He carried her through the blaring chaos of the prison, his rifle bucking one-handed as it cut down Iconian soldiers in sprays of shredded carapace. As they neared the hangar, a phalanx of guards rose to meet them, led by a towering Iconian commander. The alien officer leveled a crackling power glaive, his elephantine roar shaking the corridor. Bobby laid Elara down, his rifle already snapping to his shoulder. They wanted a fight? They'd get one. He was a whirlwind of calculated violence, energy bolts filling the air. 2 guards went down, seared through their thoraxes. Another fell as an EMP grenade fried him in his shell. The commander lunged, glaive slashing, but Bobby rolled and came up firing. Plasma stitched smoking holes up the Iconian's spine, and he crashed like a felled tree. Bobby scooped up Elara and ran, even as the stronghold shook itself apart in wailing alarms. He leapt into the first attack ship he saw, skidding into the pilot's seat. His hands flew across the pulsing Iconian controls, and with a downward punch, the ship roared out of the hangar in a flood of blue thrust. But the void outside seethed with incoming fighters, boiling out of the orbiting moon base. They fell upon Bobby's stolen ship like wolves. He hurled the vessel into a wild corkscrew, weaving madly through the tumbling asteroids. Plasma licked his kinetic shields, and red warning lights filled the cockpit. Bobby gritted his teeth and poured power to engines, throwing the ship into a razor-edged dive between kilometer-wide drifting stones as the Iconian fighters swarmed after him. Bobby's hands flew across the stolen Iconian controls, pushing the scout ship to its limits. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic sea of tumbling rocks and jagged debris. Behind them, the void blazed with plasma fire as Iconian fighters closed in. "Hold on, Elara," Bobby growled, throwing the ship into a wild corkscrew. A massive asteroid spun past, filling the view screen. Bobby juked hard, skimming the rocky surface. Plasma bolts seared past, leaving glowing trails in the void. The ship bucked and shuddered. Warning lights flashed across the alien console. Bobby ignored them, focusing on survival. He weaved through the asteroid field like a madman, using the rocks for cover. An Iconian fighter screamed past. Bobby snap-rolled, bringing his weapons to bear. Energy lanced out, punching through the fighter's hull. It exploded in a silent fireball. But more fighters swarmed in. Alarms blared as a plasma bolt clipped their wing. Bobby checked the fuel gauge and swore. They'd never make it to friendly space. That's when he saw it. A blue-green orb hanging in the void. An uninhabited planet, close enough to reach. Bobby plotted a desperate course, praying the battered ship would hold together for atmospheric entry. The planet's surface rushed up to meet them. Bobby fought the controls as they plummeted through roiling clouds. With a bone-jarring impact, the ship slammed down on rocky terrain. Bobby popped the hatch, hauling Elara's unconscious form out of the smoking wreck. His jaw dropped as he took in their surroundings. Crumbling spires of impossibly ancient structures dotted the landscape. Alien technology lay scattered among the ruins. He carried Elara to a partially intact building, setting her down gently. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Bobby," she mumbled, "where?" "Safe for now," he replied, checking her wounds. "Rest. I'll keep watch." As Alara drifted in and out of consciousness, she babbled fragments of information. Bobby's blood ran cold as he pieced it together. The Iconians had been after the location of an ancient superweapon, one capable of destroying entire star systems, and it was hidden somewhere in these ruins. A distant roar split the alien sky. Bobby's head snapped up to see an Iconian dropship descending. He recognized the distinctive armor of the figure that emerged. Xyloth had survived. Bobby scooped up Ilara and plunged deeper into the ruins. The game was on. He'd have to use every trick he knew to keep them alive and find that weapon before the Iconians did. The fate of humanity now rested on his shoulders. Bobby and Ilara raced through the crumbling ruins, their boots pounding against ancient stone as the looming threat of the Iconian invasion fleet spurred them onward. Ilara's mind, still raw from the brutal interrogation, held the key to their survival. "This way," she gasped, pointing to a half-collapsed archway. "The control chamber. It's deep underground." They descended into darkness, navigating treacherous passages filled with deadly surprises. Laser grids sliced through the air, forcing them to contort their bodies to squeeze past. Pressure plates threatened to unleash clouds of toxic gas. Bobby's combat instincts kept them alive, his reflexes honed by years of warfare. Finally, they burst into a vast chamber, its walls lined with flickering holo displays and control panels covered in alien script. Bobby whistled low. "This is it. The big gun." Ilara was already at work, her fingers flying over unfamiliar controls. "We need to decrypt this fast. The Iconians could be here any minute." Bobby nodded, moving to another console. "I'll work on the reactor. You handle targeting." Time seemed to slow as they wrestled with the ancient technology. Sweat beaded on Bobby's forehead as he coaxed life into systems that had lain dormant for millennia. Ilara muttered strings of alien syllables, piecing together the weapon's activation sequence. A distant rumble shook dust from the ceiling. Bobby's head snapped up. "They're here!" As if on cue, the scream of Iconian engines filled the air. Moments later, the whine of combat drones echoed through the ruins. "Keep working!" Bobby shouted, hefting his plasma rifle. He took up position at the chamber's entrance, ready to hold off the swarm. The first drone rounded the corner, its red eye glowing malevolently. Bobby's rifle cracked, and the machine exploded in a shower of sparks. But more followed, an endless tide of metal and malice. Bobby fought like a man possessed, his rifle spitting plasma death. When the drones got too close, he lobbed EMP grenades, frying their circuits in crackling bursts of energy. But for every drone he destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Ilara!" he yelled over the din of battle. "How much longer?" "Almost there," she called back, her voice strained. "Wait, got it!" A low hum filled the chamber as the massive weapon came online. Bobby allowed himself a moment of hope. Then a stray plasma bolt from a drone struck the main control panel, sending up a shower of sparks. "No!" Ilara cried. "The firing controls are fried." Bobby's mind raced. There was only one option left. "The reactor," he growled. "We overload it. Channel everything into the cannon." He sprinted to the reactor controls, fingers dancing across alien interfaces. Warning klaxons blared as energy levels spiked beyond safe parameters. "Ilara, take cover!" Bobby shouted as the chamber began to shake. "This is going to be close!" Just as the first Iconian capital ships translated into normal space, the overloaded cannon discharged. A blinding beam of pure energy lanced out, carving through the void. Iconian ships, caught completely off guard, simply ceased to exist. The invasion fleet, still emerging from warp, witnessed the utter destruction of their vanguard. Panic spread through the Iconian command channels. This was no mere human holdout. This was a power beyond their comprehension. As the battered remains of the Iconian armada fled in disarray, Bobby and Ilara emerged from the smoking ruins. They leaned on each other, exhausted beyond measure, but alive. "We did it," Ilara whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Bobby nodded, allowing himself a grim smile. Yeah, we showed those bugs. Humanity's here to stay. They gazed out at the alien horizon, knowing that while this battle was won, the war was far from finished. But now, humanity had a chance. They had hope. And sometimes that was all you needed to change the galaxy. Bobby's muscles ached as he scanned the alien horizon. Smoke still rose from the ruins where they'd unleashed the ancient weapon. His heart sank as he spotted multiple flashes in the upper atmosphere. Ilara, we've got company, he called out. She limped to his side, her face pale but determined. I see them, Iconian reinforcements. Bobby's fingers flew over the salvaged scanner. Damn, multiple fleets converging from all directions. They want this weapon bad. Ilara's eyes narrowed. Then let's make sure they can't have it. They worked tirelessly, scouring the sprawling ruins. Bobby uncovered hidden power conduits, routing energy to strengthen the plasma cannon's defenses. Ilara's expertise proved crucial as she decrypted alien security protocols, setting up a web of energy barriers and hidden weapon emplacements. These emitters should fry their circuitry, Ilara explained, gesturing to a cluster of devices, and I've rigged proximity mines throughout the outer perimeter. Bobby nodded grimly. Good work. We'll make the bastards bleed for every inch. Days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Then, the sky erupted in fire. The first Iconian capital ships descended like angry gods. Their weapons lashed out, turning the landscape into a sea of molten rock. Bobby gritted his teeth as the ground shook beneath his feet. Now! He roared. Ilara's fingers danced across the alien controls. The massive plasma cannon swiveled, its barrel glowing with unholy energy. It fired, a lance of pure destruction carving through space. The lead Iconian ship disintegrated, torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. Got the bastard, Bobby cheered. But more ships took its place. For hours, they weathered the storm. Ilara targeted ship after ship while Bobby manned the perimeter defenses, his rifle spitting plasma death at any Iconian foolish enough to breach their lines. A distant explosion rocked the complex. Bobby's blood ran cold as he saw Iconian ground forces swarming through a breach in their defenses. Ilara, we're compromised, he shouted into his comm. Fall back to the secondary position. They retreated deeper into the labyrinth of alien corridors. Bobby's instincts screamed danger as he caught glimpses of chitinous armor and glowing weapon ports. An Iconian commander, its carapace adorned with cruel trophies, led the assault. They're after you, Bobby growled to Ilara. I'll draw them off. Get to the secure bunker and keep that cannon firing. Before she could protest, Bobby sprinted down a side passage. He activated a series of traps, filling the air with searing lasers and choking gas. Iconian screams echoed through the complex as their numbers dwindled. The chase led to a crumbling chamber. Bobby spun, facing the Iconian commander. Its mandibles clicked in cruel anticipation as it shed its outer armor, revealing a form built for close combat. They clashed in a fury of strikes. Bobby's augmented strength met the alien's inhuman speed. Blood and ichor splattered the ancient walls. Just as Bobby gained the upper hand, pinning the commander to the floor, the alien's claw found an ornate device set into the wall. A piercing whine filled the air. The ground bucked and heaved as explosions ripped through the complex. Ilara! Bobby shouted into his comm. No response. He scooped up her unconscious form, narrowly avoiding a collapsing archway. Iconian troops scrambled in confusion as the entire structure began to implode. Bobby ran, his enhanced muscles pushed to their limit as he carried Ilara to safety. They emerged into hellish chaos. The sky swarmed with Iconian ships. Dropships disgorged endless waves of troops and war machines. The planet's surface crawled with alien invaders. We can't win this fight, Bobby muttered, scanning for an escape route. They fled into the wilderness, alien vegetation tearing at their suits. Deadly flora snapped at their heels as they pushed through dense undergrowth. The distant scream of Iconian search parties spurred them onward. Hours passed in a nightmarish blur of alien threats and near misses. Just as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, Bobby spotted an oddity, a patch of ground too regular to be natural. "There!" he gasped. They uncovered a hidden hatch, slipping inside moments before an Iconian patrol passed overhead. Darkness enveloped them as they descended into the unknown depths of the planet. Alien script flickered to life, illuminating a vast chamber filled with ancient technology. Ilara's eyes widened as she took in the forgotten outpost. "Bobby," she whispered, "I think we just found our way to win this war." Bobby's fingers flew across the alien control panel, his eyes scanning the scrolling data with growing excitement. "Ilara, you need to see this." She hurried over, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic displays. "What is it?" "This facility, it's not just some abandoned outpost. It's a research center for the civilization that built the plasma cannon." Ilara's eyes widened as she took in the vast array of technical schematics and experimental data filling the screens. "My God, Bobby! The cannon was just the tip of the iceberg." They worked tirelessly, decrypting alien data structures and piecing together the fragments of long-forgotten knowledge. Days blurred into weeks as they unraveled the secrets of the ancient defenders. Bobby wiped sweat from his brow, pointing to a complex diagram. "Look at this. The whole planet is one giant defensive network. Energy shields, weapons platforms. It's all here." Ilara nodded, her voice filled with awe. "And that's not all. There's a massive manufacturing complex buried even deeper. It's designed to churn out combat drones and war machines." Their eyes met, a spark of hope igniting. Bobby's voice was low but filled with grit. "We can use this. We can fight back." They descended further into the heart of the facility, boots echoing on metal catwalks as they navigated a labyrinth of dormant machinery. Ilara's hands moved with precision, coaxing life back into systems that had slumbered for millennia. Warning klaxons blared as power surged through long-dead circuits. Bobby gritted his teeth, fighting to stabilize the energy flow. "Come on, you ancient bastard! Work!" With a thunderous roar, the facility awakened. Conveyor belts groaned into motion. Robotic arms pivoted and flexed. From the assembly lines, the first of their mechanical defenders emerged, sleek, deadly, and ready for battle. Bobby allowed himself a grim smile. Now we've got a fighting chance. On the planet's surface, Iconian forces dug in, their artillery hammering at the ruins. They never saw the attack coming. Swarms of combat drones erupted from hidden access points, their weapons blazing with unearthly power. Iconian troops scattered, their chitinous armor no match for the precision strikes of the ancient war machines. Bobby stood at the heart of the command center, orchestrating the assault. Holographic displays showed the tide of battle turning, Iconian strongholds crumbling under the relentless assault. "Ilara, status on the shield?" he barked into his comm. Her voice crackled with static. "Almost there. The power draw is immense, but I think I've got it stabilized." A deafening roar filled the air as Iconian capital ships began their orbital bombardment. The ground shook, dust raining from the ceiling of the underground complex. "Ilara, we're out of time." "Got it!" she shouted. A shimmering dome of energy erupted from the planet's surface, expanding outward at impossible speed. Iconian weapons fire splashed harmlessly against the barrier, dissipating in dazzling cascades of light. Bobby allowed himself a moment of exultation before refocusing on the battle at hand. "All units, press the attack! We've got them on the ropes." The tide had turned. Iconian forces, cut off from orbital support, crumbled before the onslaught of their robotic army. One by one, alien strongholds fell, their defenders retreating in disarray. In desperation, the Iconian commander made his final, fatal mistake. Massive capital ships hurtled towards the planet, a kamikaze strike aimed at overloading the energy shield. Bobby watched the tactical display, his heart pounding. "Ilara, will it hold?" Her voice was steady, confident. "It'll hold." The Iconian ships struck the barrier at relativistic speeds. For a moment, the shield flickered, strained to its very limits. Then, in a silent explosion of unimaginable power, the alien vessels simply ceased to exist. Silence fell across the battlefield. The Iconian invasion force was utterly destroyed. Their threat to humanity ended in fire and fury. The Iconian threat vanquished, Bobby and Alara delved deeper into the alien facility's secrets. Their boots echoed through cavernous chambers as they navigated twisting corridors, each turn revealing new marvels of long-forgotten technology. "Bobby, look at this!" Alara called out, her voice echoing off metal walls. She stood before a massive bulkhead door, its surface etched with intricate alien script. Bobby jogged over, his eyes widening as he took in the sight. "Can you decipher it?" Alara's fingers danced across a nearby control panel. With a hiss of pressurized air, the door slowly ground open, revealing a vast hangar bay stretching into darkness. "Holy shit," Bobby breathed. Row upon row of sleek spacecraft filled the cavernous space. Their angular hulls gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, untouched by the ravages of time. Bobby approached the nearest vessel, running his hand along its smooth surface. "These aren't just fighters," Alara said, her eyes scanning readouts on a nearby terminal. "They're deep space exploration craft. And look at these energy readings. I've never seen anything like it." For days, they worked tirelessly to bring the ancient ships online. Ilara's expertise with alien systems proved invaluable as she coaxed long-dormant reactors to life. Bobby focused on weapons and defensive systems, marveling at their raw destructive potential. "Alara, come here," Bobby called out, excitement evident in his voice. "You need to see this." She hurried over to where he stood at the helm of one of the larger vessels. Bobby's fingers flew across holographic displays, bringing up streams of data. "These faster-than-light drives," he explained, "they're beyond anything we've ever encountered. We could reach the Iconian homeworld in hours, not weeks." Alara's eyes widened as she processed the implications. "We could end this war. For good." Bobby nodded, a fierce glint in his eye. "Exactly. It's time we took the fight to them." Word spread quickly through nearby human outposts and colonies. Volunteers flocked to their cause, hardened mercenaries, ex-military specialists, and civilians with scores to settle against the Iconians. The ancient hangar bay buzzed with activity as the strike force took shape. Alara stood before a holographic display of the Iconian homeworld, her voice steady as she briefed the assembled pilots. "Their orbital defenses are formidable, but predictable. We'll emerge from FTL here, in their sensor shadow. Team Alpha will neutralize their communication arrays while Beta takes out their primary weapons platforms." Bobby stepped forward, his face set with purpose. "Once their orbital defenses are down, my team will make planetfall. Our target is their High Inquisitor, the bastard responsible for torturing thousands of humans. We take him alive." The plan set, the fleet of ancient warships surged to life. Their sleek forms rose from the hidden hangar, ascending through the planet's atmosphere. With a flash of impossible energy, they vanished into the depths of space. Emerging from FTL at the edge of the Iconian system, Bobby's strike force found the alien homeworld's defenders completely unprepared. Human pilots, their reflexes honed by years of desperate combat, tore through the Iconian fleet with surgical precision. Bobby gripped the arms of his command chair as his vessel shuddered under enemy fire. "All units, press the attack. Don't let up." Ilara's voice crackled over the comm. "Orbital defenses neutralized. You're clear for planetfall, Bobby." His strike team's dropships screamed through the Iconian atmosphere, alien architecture sprawling below them. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, but their ancient shields held firm. With a bone-jarring impact, they touched down outside a massive fortified structure. "Move, move, move!" Bobby shouted, leading his team into the teeth of Iconian defenses. Alien weaponry sizzled past them as they advanced, their own guns spitting deadly accurate fire. Inside the bunker, they fought room by room, Bobby's enhanced strength and reflexes, proving a match for even the most elite Iconian warriors. Finally, they reached a heavily armored door, the High Inquisitor's inner sanctum. "Alara, we need an override now!" Bobby shouted into his comm, ducking as alien plasma scorched the wall beside him. "Working on it," she replied, her voice strained. "Their firewalls are adapting, but I've almost got it." The massive door slid open with a hiss. Bobby charged in, his weapon trained on the towering figure of the High Inquisitor. The alien's mandibles clicked in fury as it realized its defeat. With the High Inquisitor secured, Bobby's forces methodically dismantled the Iconian's war machine. Shipyards crumbled under precision strikes. Weapons foundries erupted in flames. The once mighty Iconian military found itself outmatched at every turn. As panic spread through Iconian ranks, their high command transmitted a message of unconditional surrender. Bobby stood on the bridge of his captured flagship, watching as the historic broadcast played out across every frequency. The High Inquisitor, its carapace dulled and voice subdued, spoke directly to its people. "The era of Iconian dominance has ended. We submit to the demands of humanity. Our cruel practices against them and other species are hereby denounced and forbidden." Bobby turned to Alara, seeing a mix of emotions play across her face. "It's over," he said softly. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant curve of the Iconian homeworld. "For now, but we can't let our guard down." Their return to the hidden facility was triumphant, yet tinged with caution. As they descended into its depths, Bobby and Alara knew their work had only just begun. The vast repository of ancient technology now stood as humanity's shield against future threats. Bobby's hand found Alara's as they gazed out at the rows of alien ships, their potential both thrilling and terrifying. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we'll face it together." The years of hard-won peace crumbled in an instant. Alarms blared through the ancient facility as Bobby and Alara rushed to the central control room. Rebel forces swarmed the outer defenses, their weapons fire echoing through the corridors. "How the hell did they get past our early warning systems?" Bobby shouted, his fingers flying across holographic displays. Alara's eyes darted between readouts. "They must have inside help. We're compromised." The floor shook as explosions rocked the outer perimeter. Bobby activated the facility's robotic sentries, unleashing swarms of combat drones against the invaders. On tactical screens, waves of red dots pushed deeper into the complex. "Silas Core," Alara spat the name. "I should have known he'd make a play for this place." Bobby nodded grimly. "Hold them off. I'm activating the inner defenses." Ancient weapon emplacements roared to life, filling access corridors with searing energy blasts. Rebel troops fell by the dozens, but more poured in to take their place. An explosion rocked the command center. Smoke billowed as a section of wall caved in. Bobby spun, raising his sidearm as rebel commandos poured through the breach. "Alara, get down!" Bobby dove for cover, squeezing off precise shots that dropped the lead attackers. Alara slid behind a console, returning fire with her own weapon. The air filled with plasma bolts and the acrid smell of ozone. Bobby's enhanced reflexes allowed him to pick off rebels with deadly accuracy, but they kept coming. "We can't hold them forever," Alara shouted over the din of battle. Bobby's mind focused as he made the call. "Initiating Omega Protocol. We're purging the databanks." Alara's eyes widened. "But that'll destroy everything we've worked for." "Better that than let Core get his hands on it." Bobby tapped in the command sequence. "There's a hidden shuttle in sublevel C. You need to get out of here. Rally our allies." "I'm not leaving you!" Bobby gripped her shoulders. "You have to. I'll hold them off and scuttle the base. Go!" Alara hesitated for a split second, then nodded. She sprinted for a concealed exit as Bobby laid down covering fire. With Alara safely away, Bobby turned his full attention to the battle. He sealed blast doors throughout the facility, funneling the rebels into kill zones swept by automated defenses. From the command center, Bobby orchestrated a symphony of destruction. Scything beams of energy cut down waves of attackers. Robotic sentries engaged in brutal close-quarters combat. But still they came. Bobby watched grimly as elite rebel squads breached the inner sanctum, clearly intent on capturing him and the facility's secrets. He retreated deeper into the heart of the ancient base, using his intimate knowledge of its layout to stay one step ahead. In engineering subsections and maintenance crawlspaces, Bobby laid traps and ambushes that decimated the rebel forces. Hours passed in a blur of desperate combat. Bobby's muscles burned with fatigue, but he pushed on. He had to buy Alara enough time to bring reinforcements. Just as the rebels closed in on his final fallback position, alarms blared. Bobby's eyes snapped to external sensors, a fierce grin splitting his face. A massive fleet had just dropped out of FTL, their weapons already blazing. Alara had done it. Rebel positions crumbled under the orbital barrage. Bobby seized the initiative, coordinating his remaining defenses with the Loyalist fleet to catch Kor's forces in a devastating crossfire. As the tide turned, Bobby spotted a shuttle streaking for the upper atmosphere. He knew instantly who was aboard. "Kor," he snarled. Bobby sprinted for the hangar bay, adrenaline surging. He leapt into the cockpit of an ancient fighter, its systems humming to life at his touch. The sleek craft screamed into the turbulent skies, quickly closing the gap with Kor's fleeing shuttle. Bobby's hands danced over the controls, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons. Kor juked and weaved, displaying surprising skill. The two craft dueled above roiling storm clouds, their engines leaving superheated contrails in their wake. Bobby pushed his ship to its limits, anticipating Kor's every move. A precisely aimed shot clipped the shuttle's engines, sending it spiraling towards a desolate moon. Following the trail of burning debris, Bobby set his craft down on the airless, rocky surface. He sealed his suit and stepped out onto the lunar landscape. In the distance, Kor climbed from the wreckage of his shuttle. The rebel leader drew a wicked-looking blade as Bobby approached. No words were exchanged. In the silence of the airless moon, the two men circled each other. Bobby's enhanced reflexes gave him an edge, but Kor fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. They clashed in a brutal dance of strikes and counters. Kor's blade sliced through Bobby's suit, the wound instantly cauterized in the vacuum. Bobby retaliated with a crushing blow that cracked Kor's faceplate. Back and forth they fought across the stark lunar terrain, neither willing to concede. The fate of humanity's future hung in the balance with each thunderous, soundless impact. The dust settled on the lunar surface as Bobby and Kor's brutal fight came to an end. Bobby stood over his defeated foe, chest heaving from exertion. He grabbed Kor's collar and dragged him back to the ancient fighter, securing him for the return trip to the facility. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Bobby's comm crackled to life. Ilara's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Bobby, thank God you're back. We've got a situation." Minutes later, Bobby strode into the command center, still covered in moon dust. Ilara stood before a massive holographic display, her face illuminated by streams of data. "What's going on?" Bobby asked, moving to her side. Ilara's fingers flew across the controls, zooming in on a section of space far beyond the system's outer reaches. Long-range sensors picked this up an hour ago. It's massive. Bobby's eyes widened as he took in the scale of the anomaly. A vast armada of ships, their designs unlike anything he'd ever seen, stretched across light years of space. "How many?" he breathed. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They're still too far out for an accurate count." Bobby's mind raced. "The Iconians?" Ilara shook her head. "No, this is something else entirely. Something older." They spent the next hours poring over the ancient facility's databases, searching for any clue to the identity of this new threat. As the strange fleet drew closer, pieces began to fall into place. "The Preservers," Ilara said, her voice hushed with awe and fear. "An ancient race, thought to be nothing more than myth." Bobby read the data scrolling across his screen, his stomach nodding. "Says here, they could cross the galaxy in the blink of an eye. Entire civilizations fell before them. And now they're here," Ilara said, drawn by our use of their technology. The command center erupted into frenzied activity. Bobby barked orders, coordinating the facility's defenses. Robotic sentries poured from assembly lines, their metallic forms gleaming under harsh lights. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. "Bobby, come look at this." She stood before a massive circular structure, easily 100 meters across. Cables and conduits snaked from its base, connecting to the facility's power core. "A warp gate," Bobby breathed. "But it's not like any FTL drive I've ever seen." Ilara nodded. "Because it doesn't just move through space, it folds it. If we can get it working, we might have a chance." They worked tirelessly, diverting power from every non-essential system. The first wave of Preserver scouts breached the system's outer defenses, their ships shrugging off sustained fire from automated defense platforms. Bobby stood on the bridge of an ancient warship, leading a ragtag fleet of human vessels and robotic fighters. "All ships, form up on me. We need to buy time for the gate to power up." The void of space lit up with weapons fire. Bobby's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dance through the Preserver formation, his guns never silent. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. "Ilara, we're getting our asses kicked out here," Bobby shouted into his comm. "How much longer?" "Almost there," her voice crackled back. "Just a few more minutes." Bobby saw a Preserver cruiser bearing down on a human colony ship. He threw his vessel into a steep dive, interposing himself between them. His ship shuddered under the impact of the alien weaponry. Just as it seemed they could hold out no longer, Ilara's triumphant voice filled the comm. "It's ready. Bobby, get them to follow you." Bobby's damaged ship limped towards the planet, a stream of Preserver vessels in hot pursuit. As he cleared the atmosphere, he saw it, a swirling vortex of twisted space-time, hungry and waiting. "All ships, break off!" Bobby shouted. "Let them chase me!" He pushed his engines past their limits, feeling the strange pull of the warp gate. The Preservers followed, their superior speed closing the gap rapidly. At the last possible second, Bobby fired his maneuvering thrusters, veering away from the gate's maw. The lead Preserver ships weren't so lucky. They plunged into the rift, vanishing in a flash of light. The rest of the armada realized the trap too late. Ship after ship was drawn in, unable to escape the gate's gravitational grip. In a final blinding flash, the warp gate collapsed, taking the Preserver vanguard with it. Bobby's crippled vessel limped back to the facility. He found Ilara in the command center, her face etched with exhaustion and disbelief at what they'd just accomplished. "We did it," she said softly. Bobby nodded, but his expression remained grim. "For now. But they'll be back. And next time, they'll bring everything they have." The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air as Bobby and Ilara surveyed the devastation. Scorched metal and shattered robotic limbs littered the facility's once pristine corridors. Ilara's fingers flew across a flickering console, her face illuminated by the dim emergency lighting. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures," she reported, her voice tight. "The Preservers are regrouping at the system's edge." Bobby's eyebrows furrowed as he studied the tactical display. "How long?" "Hours, maybe less. We need to evacuate, now." Without hesitation, Bobby keyed the facility-wide comm system. His voice echoed through every chamber and corridor. "Attention all personnel. This is not a drill. Initiate emergency evacuation protocols immediately. All available ships, rendezvous at these coordinates." As the first civilian transports began to arrive, Bobby and Ilara split up. Ilara coordinated the loading of refugees, her calm voice a stark contrast to the panic around her. Meanwhile, Bobby raced through the facility's core systems, initiating purge protocols and overload sequences. The facility shuddered as Bobby detonated a series of shaped charges, obliterating key research labs. He paused to catch his breath, sweat stinging his eyes. A nearby console beeped insistently. Bobby's blood ran cold as he read the sensor data. "Ilara, we've got company," he shouted into his comm. "Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, not friendlies." Before Ilara could respond, the facility rocked with explosions. Alarms blared as breach alerts lit up across Bobby's tactical display. He sprinted towards the main hangar, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge falling debris. The scene that greeted him was chaos. A contingent of heavily armed mercenaries poured from a sleek assault shuttle, their weapons already blazing. At their head strode a towering figure in blood-red armor, a cruel smile visible beneath his half-mask. "Trax!" Bobby snarled, recognizing the infamous warlord. Loyalist security forces and robotic sentries engaged the mercenaries, filling the air with plasma bolts and the screams of the wounded. Bobby dove behind a stack of crates, returning fire with precision. "Alara, status!" he shouted into his comm. Her voice came back, breathless and strained. "Evac is at 60%, but we've got preservers incoming. A scout force breached the outer defenses. They're headed for the central core." Bobby's mind raced. He needed to deal with Drax, protect Alara, and somehow hold off the preservers long enough to get the civilians to safety. He took a deep breath, centered himself, and burst from cover. His enhanced speed took the mercenaries by surprise. Bobby closed the distance in heartbeats, his fists and feet a blur of lethal precision. Bones cracked and bodies fell as he carved a path through Drax's forces. The warlord himself proved a more formidable opponent. Drax's augmented frame matched Bobby blow for blow, their battle a deadly dance amidst the chaos of the hangar. "You're a fool, Bobby," Drax taunted, deflecting a vicious strike. "The preservers will wipe us out, but with this tech we could rule what's left." Bobby didn't waste breath on a response. He feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping Drax's legs out from under him. As the warlord crashed to the ground, Bobby delivered a crushing blow to his helmet, cracking the faceplate and leaving Drax stunned. Without pausing, Bobby sprinted for the central core. He arrived to find Alara pinned down by Drax's lieutenants, their cruel laughter echoing off the ancient walls. Bobby's fury propelled him forward, his strikes precise and devastating. In moments, Alara's attackers lay broken at their feet. She gripped Bobby's arm, her eyes wide. "The preservers. They're here for the tech, for me." As if summoned by her words, otherworldly shrieks filled the air. Preserver scouts, their forms a nightmarish blend of organic and mechanical, poured into the chamber. Bobby and Alara stood back to back, fighting desperately against the alien onslaught. The facility trembled continuously now as the main preserver fleet bombarded their defenses. Bobby could see the shield generators failing on nearby displays. Time was running out. "We need to trigger the self-destruct," Alara shouted, ducking under a preserver's energy blade. Bobby nodded grimly. They fought their way to the primary control nexus, inputting the final override codes. Warning klaxons blared as the self-destruct sequence engaged. 2 minutes, Bobby yelled. "We need to move." They sprinted for the last evacuation shuttle, preservers and mercenaries alike hot on their heels. Bobby laid down covering fire as Alara prepped the shuttle for launch. They lifted off just as the first explosions began to tear the facility apart. The shuttle broke atmosphere, joining a ragtag fleet of civilian ships desperately fleeing the doomed planet. Bobby's hands tightened on the controls as he saw the massive preserver armada closing in, their weapons already charging. Alara's face was ashen as she studied the tactical readouts. "They'll overtake us before we can jump to warp. There's no way out." Bobby turned to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him cold. He saw the decision she'd already made, the sacrifice she was prepared to make. "Alara, no." She silenced him with a fierce kiss, then shoved him aside. Her fingers danced across the controls, locking him out. "Get them to safety, Bobby. Remember me." Before he could react, Alara had sealed herself in the shuttle's escape pod. It launched away from the main craft, streaking towards the preserver flagship. Bobby could only watch in horror as a blinding flash engulfed the massive alien vessel. The resulting spatial distortion spread rapidly, consuming preserver ships by the dozens. Bobby snapped out of his shock, barking orders to the surviving human vessels. "All ships, prepare for emergency warp jump now." As the subspace vortex expanded behind them, Bobby felt the lurch of faster-than-light travel. His last glimpse of the system showed the Preserver Armada being torn apart by the very forces they had sought to control. Hours later, adrift in an unfamiliar sector of space, Bobby stood before the ragtag group of survivors. His voice was raw with emotion as he addressed them. "We've lost everything, our home, our technology, and brave souls like Alara. But we're still here, still fighting. The Preservers may hunt us, but they'll learn what it truly means to face humanity. We'll find a way. We always do." As the survivors dispersed to tend to their wounded and plan their next move, Bobby retreated to the ship's observation deck. He stared out at the star-filled void, his hands clenched into fists. In the reflection of the viewport, he saw Alara's face, her final smile etched into his memory. "I'll make this right," he whispered. "Whatever it takes."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.